The Battle of Melle was a small meeting engagement fought on 9 July 1745, during the War of the Austrian Succession, between forces of the Pragmatic Allies and the French following the Battle of Fontenoy that would have serious consequences for the Pragmatic Army of the Allies and Flanders. The Allies, under Lieutenant General Moltke, were attempting to send more troops to defend the city Ghent, one of the major supply depots. The French, commanded by Lieutenant General Du Chayla, had sent the force to establish a crossing and a post south of the river Scheldt around the town of Melle to begin isolating Ghent. The Allied force was driven off with significant losses, allowing the French to capture Ghent. Preliminary maneuvers. After the French victory at the Battle of Fontenoy and the capture of the city of Tournai, Marshal Saxe began to exploit the weakness of the Allies and maneuvered so as to threaten Brussels and Brabant, Ghent and Flanders, forcing Duke of Cumberland, overall commander of the Allies, to choose which places to defend. Of the Allies' two major magazines, Ghent and Brussels, Ghent was of more value as the supplies that had been reserved while those in Brussels had been used. However, Cumberland decided to defend Brabant and Brussels with the field army while sending some troops to increase the garrison of Ghent and issuing orders to transport the supplies out of Ghent. Saxe sent Du Chayla on a reconnaissance in Force-to Melle, a small town between Ghent and the town of Alsd. His command consisted of 2 infantry brigades, Normandy and Crillon, each consisting of 4 battalions, a detachment of Grassens light infantry, and 3 brigades of cavalry, Berry, Royal Étranger and Du Roy, some 24 squadrons. There were about 20 small battalion guns and 20 pontoons in a camp being established on and around the road that ran between the town of Alsd and Ghent. Parts of the Normandy Brigade, some 2 battalions, were dispersed in various posts along the Scheldt and the road to Ghent, as was the sum of Crillon. Du Chayla sent his light troops, the Grassens, towards Alsd to reconnoitre. Moltke had orders from Cumberland to throw as many troops as possible from Alsd into Ghent to reinforce the garrison. Moltke's force was made up of a brigade commanded by Brigadier Thomas Bligh of 3 British infantry regiments, the Royal Scots, or 1st Foot, Bligh's 20th Foot and Handaside's 16th Foot, 3 squadrons of a British cavalry regiment, Rich's 4th Dragoons, 2 squadrons of Hanoverian cavalry, 1 of the Lieb regiment and 1 of Adelebsen's Dragoons, 5 or 6 squadrons of Dutch cavalry from Slippenbach's Dragoons, and 2 or 3 squadrons of Austrian cavalry, the Lines and Styrian's Dragoons, and some 300 Austrian hussars. Battle. On July 9, the light troops of the Grassens advanced east towards Alsd and occupied the Château de Masmen, a strong walled complex some 8 miles west of Alsd near Melle. Moltke sent the Royals to drive them off, and a vigorous firefight broke out, but without artillery the Royals were unable to dislodge de Grassens and his men. The 1st Foot then rejoined the rest of the force, and it was decided by Moltke, without informing Bligh, to leave the Grassens in the rear and advance as instructed down the raised causeway road to Ghent. Despite some notice of the Allied advance from messengers sent by de Grassens, Du Chayla's force was fairly dispersed in various posts along the route and in the process of making camp. The 20 artillery pieces were in park along the road facing north, baggage wagons and pontoon wagons in rows behind them. A stone bridge on the road crossing the Gottrode Brook, a stream that flowed into the Scheldt, was unguarded, and a walled priory flanking the road only lightly occupied. One battalion of the Normandy Brigade was posted in the town of Melle, another well to the west of Melle. The battalions of Crillon Brigade were also dispersed around the area, some taking post or billeting in the various chateaux and farmhouses, with one battalion astride the road west of the bridge. Both sides were surprised by the contact, the French by the sudden arrival of the Allies in force, while the French were in the process of establishing the camp, and the Allies by the size and positions of the French force. Moltke, with the Royal Scots, led the advanced guard column of about 1,700 troops, consisting of some 650 infantry of the Royal Scots and about 1,050 cavalry. They crossed the bridge, charged and dispersed the Crillon battalion, commencing the action at about 7 p.m. They then rushed up the road and overran the artillery park, briefly capturing the guns. However, as the guns were unlimbered in park, not for action, the Royals were unable to use them against the French. The Duc de Laval and his battalion of the Crillon Brigade then came up behind the pontoons and wagons, engaging the Royal Scots, soon to be followed by two more battalions led by Le Marquis de Crillon. The nature of the terrain was unfavorable to cavalry, and the Allied cavalry was unable to aid the Royals. During the ensuing musketry duel, Moltke decided to take the Hussars and Rich's dragoons and some Hanoverian cavalry and make a dash for Ghent. A small detachment of Du Barry's cavalry held them up as some of the Normandy Brigade arrived, forcing Moltke off the causeway onto other tracks. A French battalion cut the road behind them. Now Moltke broke off with the entire force and headed for Ghent, running a gauntlet of fire from the various French posts along the roads and ways, and abandoning the rest of the column, losing about one half of this force, including nearly 400 of the Royal Scots. During this time, Bligh came up the road with his regiment, the 20th Foot, with some of the Dutch cavalry following. Next came Handesar's 16th with the rest of the cavalry. With Moltke gone, Bligh assumed command of the nearly 1,450 infantry and some 1,000 cavalry. The ground around the road was unfavorable to the cavalry of both sides and would not permit full deployment, with the French firing from front and flank. So Bligh fell back to better position in a field south of the road behind the Gottrode Brook rivulet, with most of his centre and his left behind Simwards and his right on the raised causeway on the other side from Priory. This covered him from the fire of a couple of companies of French grenadiers behind the wall of the Priory, and gave him a defensible front of rough terrain that prevented any cavalry actions. The regiments formed a line of battle, with the cavalry in support advancing on and engaging the French that came up. Du Chayla counter-attacked, perhaps now 5 battalions, Laval, 2 of Crillon and 2 of Normandy from Melle, about 2,000 strong, with a battery of artillery and most of the French cavalry in support. While the two sides were locked in a firefight, the Grassens that had been bypassed by the Allies earlier in the day now arrived in Bligh's rear, capturing all the baggage and supplies and cutting the line of retreat down the road to Alsd. Bligh, seeing that he was now in danger of losing his whole force, withdrew at about 9 p.m. in some disorder through the woods and fields to the southeast, staying off the road until he was near to Alsd, where he arrived with considerable loss, including all the baggage. Aftermath. The defeat cut off Ghent from any further support. Saxe sent Ulrich Frederick Waldemar, Comte de Loendal, with another 15,000 troops to complete the investment of the city. Loendal opened the trenches and the Dutch governor surrendered the city of Ghent, with an immense amount of supplies and material, along with its garrison consisting of Dutch and some 700 British troops from the Royals' 1st Foot, the 23rd Royal Welsh Fusiliers, and most of Rich's surviving dragoons fell to the French on July 11 and the citadel on July 15. This was soon followed by the capture of Bruges and Oudenarde on July 19. Bibliography. Digitalisierungsprojekt Wilhelmshaw Kriegskarten map of the Battle of Melle. Christen, Jean-Baptiste, Les Délaisses des Pays Bas, Paris, MDCCLXXXVI, Volume 2, Pichat H. Le Campagne du Maréchal Saxe dans les Flandres, de Fontenoy, la prise de Bruxelles suivie d'une correspondance inédite de Maurice de Saxe pendant cette campagne, Paris 1909. Browning, Re. The War of the Austrian Succession, St. Martin's Press, New York, ISBN 0-312-12561-5. Chandler, David, The Art of Warfare in the Age of Marlborough. Spellmount Limited, ISBN 0-946771-421. Screen, Francis Henry, Fontenoy and Great Britain's share in the War of the Austrian Succession 1741–48. London, Edinburgh, 1906. Fortescue, J. W. A History of the British Army, Macmillan, London, 1899, Volume 2, Smollett, Tobias. History of England, From the Revolution to the Death of George II, London, 1848, Volume 2, D. Espagnac, Jean-Baptiste Joseph Damartse de Sarhuguet, Histoire de Maurice, Comte de Saxe, Duc de Colonde de Semigal, Paris, 1775, Volume 2, pp. 77–81. Screen, J. O.E. The Action at Melle of 9 July 1745. Society for Army Historical Research. Journal of the Society for Army Historical Research. Volume 77, Issues 309–312, London, 1999.